Hello and welcome to Maltbox, the non-chill filtered whiskey blog. I'm Andy and this is Whiskey Review 123. What I have for you today is a Highland single malt Scotch whiskey. It's a pretty well priced age statement single malt whiskey and it's quite an old one at that, actually, to be fair, particularly in its price point. It's from a distillery that I've actually reviewed the 12-year-old of previously. It's this, the Loch Lomond 18-year-old. And there it is, guys and girls. Now, bit of a caveat here. Just as I've started to record this video, I don't mean like within minutes, but the week that I've been recording this video, Loch Lomond have actually announced a rebrand. So this is the older version of this bottling. The contents are unchanged. They basically just had a bit of a packaging revamp. So there's the bottle as well for you. Now, Loch Lomond, again, I'm not going to go into too much detail because I did go into quite a bit of detail around the distillery on the 12-year-old review, but it is quite an interesting distillery. They have various types of stills. They can produce both malt and grain whiskey all under one roof, which is pretty rare, to be fair. Now, this is their 18-year-old expression. It is bottled at 46%. It tells me on the back here this is non-chill filtered. However, it does contain added colouring. Probably can't really see the colour too well through the green glass there. So, Loch Lomond 18. I started off the review by saying it's quite well priced for its age. Now, you find a lot of 18-year-olds nowadays, particularly from the sought-after distilleries, such as Glendronach, for example, coming in at over 100 quid, or around 100 quid. This retails for between 60 to 70 pounds. Still a lot of money. It is still a lot of money. 60 to 70 quid of anybody's money, particularly in this current economical nightmare that we're going through at the moment, is a lot of money. So, in the scheme of things though, it is still pretty well priced. Colour, as always, guys, I'll be honest, I'm not going to focus too much on the colour because at the end of the day, it's not natural. 46% bonus, non-chill filtered, again, a nice bit of bonus there as well. Some pretty decent legs going down the glass there. This has been matured in American oak, ex-bourbon casks basically, be it first fill and refill. Not too sure of the exact makeup. On the nose. Well, I've got to say, it's very, very different to the 12-year-old. Where the 12-year-old was quite fresh and vibrant, this is actually a little bit more subdued. It's a little bit dusty, if you will. It feels quite not as vigorous, is probably the way I describe my initial nosing of this, compared to the 12. The 12, there's a bit of, attitude about it in a way. This, however, is quite quiet. And that's not to say there isn't anything on the nose. What I'm getting initially is roasted chestnuts. I'm getting engine oil. I'm getting quite a heavy oak influence, if I'm being honest as well. There's a little bit of chocolate in there, possibly. There is a slight fruity note. It could be apples, maybe red apples. I seem to remember mentioning green apple on the 12-year-old, which is generally quite tart, quite crisp, like Granny Smith or something, whereas this is a little bit sweeter, possibly. One thing I would sort of say, I've said it's probably a little bit more, quiet and subdued, etc. And it's 18 years old. However, 18 years doesn't dictate richness. It doesn't dictate quality. The extra 6 years in a cask doesn't mean the 6 years make it better. Just bear that in mind. There are many drams that I've had where I prefer the 15 to the 21, the 12 to the 18, the 10 to the 15. There's various combinations as you can imagine. But I found that distillery profiles and distillery maturation methods can vary and they can have various effects. Some casks, you could argue, are left for too long. Some distillates are a little bit better when they're a bit younger. Could this be the case here? I'm really liking that engine oil note though. It's something that I find quite regularly, and it's quite well known actually in Le Jig, that's produced at Tobermory, so that's their heavily peated spirit. And for me, that's quite well known that has like that nice sort of dirty engine oil quality. And I think for me, the nose on this is almost industrial. It's quite thick. It's quite, again, dusty, quite clunky. But that engine oil, I really like it. I really do like it. Apart from that, and the other flavours that I mentioned initially, there might be a little hint of licorice. Possibly some, I don't know, what's that? Is it toffee maybe? It's a little bit of spice on the back there as well. But apart from that, it's relatively quiet. And I know I appreciate saying that, I've listed off a load of flavours, but compared to the 12-year-old, this isn't actually quite as in your face. On the palate, decent mouthfeel. Again, up front for me, a little bit of fruit, sort of red fruits, maybe like dried cranberries or something. Possibly even apricot, to be honest. I think it is apricot, which is weird. It's not a flavour I get very often. It gets a little bit malty. Think sort of like malt biscuits. It's quite sweet towards the finish. There's a little tiny, just going into that finish now. As I'm talking, I'm breathing back out. There's a tiny little wisp, a hint, a smattering of smoke. It's not a heavy smoke. It's not a predominant smoke. It's not an overbearing smoke, because I didn't even pick it up on the palate until I'd swallowed it. Just going back to the nose very briefly there. Could there almost be a soapiness to it? Possibly. Again, the palate quite sweet. I'm going to stick with that apricot, that dried apricot that you can use in baking. I'm getting a little bit of chocolate, possibly some toffee, some nuttiness, a little bit of nuttiness in there as well. And then going into that finish, you've got that nice smoke. And it is nice. It's a new dimension because it's not on the palate for very long at all. It just suddenly comes out of nowhere. You would not have expected it to hit so late on. The finish is quite warming, medium length, sweetness. You've got a little bit of peat in there, a little bit of smoke, and a tiny little touch of spice as well. I'm gonna just one more little dram of that just for me. Now, I'll be honest, for me, I think I prefer the 12-year-old to the 18. I think Loch Lomond distillate in particular, I think it's probably a little bit stronger when it's younger. And I don't mean physically in terms of ABV. I think it just adapts a lot better to that sort of like first fill American oak that they use on the 12. And I think it's got a little bit more about it. I think you can tell that the 18 is older than the 12. Arguably, I might not necessarily put it down as 18 years, if I'm honest. If I had it in a blind test, I'm not too sure. But I mean, in terms of value, it's still pretty good value in the scheme of things. In today's market, again, going back to what I said at the start, where you're looking at some 18-year-olds fetching 100 quid. And let's face it, guys, I mean, these whiskey prices have been creeping up. They have, I've noticed it. I mean, it's only the other day that I noticed that Springbank 10, is now coming in at about 43 quid, 44 quid. And I think that used to be in the mid-30s from memory. And I get it, you know, things change, times change. You know, I mean, this probably cost about £1.20 in the 70s by equivalent. But yeah, I mean, it's a nice dram. It is a nice dram. I think for 60, if you can get it at 60 quid, which in fairness, I actually got this cheaper than that in the whiskey shop flash sales. I got this for about 53 quid, so I couldn't really turn that down at this sort of age. I don't regret it. Nice drop. As you can see, I'm starting to make a decent sized dent in it. So with that in mind, I'm going to box it off for today, guys. See you soon.